Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. What I'm going to be talking about in this video is actually the first video of my 10-day free mini course called the Anti-Quitter Protocol. And what this really is 10 days to really help you see all the ways in which you play out patterns of micro-quitting, settling, complacency, pulling back before you ever actually get to the finish line. And I just figured, let me just give you a taste. Let me just have you see what it is. And I think this conversation is really good. It's about shame. It's so different than what you're used to seeing. And I just wanted to give you a taste. And if you love it, it's literally a free course. So you can go to the link below to actually snag the entire 10-day course. But let's just dive right in. Hi, guys. Welcome to day one of the Anti-Quitter Protocol. We have to start with shame today because it is at the root of so many quitting tendencies. And I'm very likely going to try and turn your understanding of shame completely on its head and have you start thinking about it very, very differently than what most people are conversing about when it comes to shame. Shame at the core is just really, I like to think about it as the feeling of not enough. It is negative self-evaluation. It is feelings of inadequacy. In its absolute simplest form, it is simply a deep-rooted belief that something about us is not enough. So if you've ever felt not pretty enough, not ambitious enough, not desirable enough, not talented enough, skilled enough, good enough, lovable enough, appreciated enough, capable enough, and you've walked away with that feeling of just inadequacy or a sense of defeat, then welcome to the club of billions of people who have felt it, and you now know shame. You know what we're talking about for today's conversation. It's such a universal experience, and I actually think that's incredibly important to name because shame is a very isolating mentality. It has you kind of turning inwards. It thrives in silence. And it has us very quietly fighting ourselves when in reality, every single person that you interact with in a day probably is either experiencing shame or has experienced shame. So when we bring it to light, which we're kind of going to do today, it becomes so much more manageable to actually overcome. I'm actually just going to go through some shame-fueled behaviors, and I had this from the first iteration of the Anti-Quitter Protocol, and we're doing the revamp now, but people really love this list. So I'm like, let's just throw it back in there. So shame-fueled behaviors, things that are fueled by your shame, whether you're identifying it or not, is number one, you believe who you are today limits what you can achieve in the future. So if you have that kind of thinking of I just don't know if I'm capable of getting there, or it feels like it can't be me, or I don't know if I'm gonna be able to hit that. Number two, when things get uncomfortable, you retreat and settle into a defeated mentality. So if things get uncomfortable and you start quitting, right? That's why we're here. And you start to get defeated and decide that things aren't going to work, it's because of shame. Third thing, you regard yourself and think more about your failures, your shortcomings, and your fears than your strengths, your characteristics, and potential. If you think so much more negatively, like it or not, if you're more pessimistic, if you think more about how you're going to fail or how you can't make it, shame. Next thing is seeing others succeed makes you question if you're good enough to get there. It's also shame. You spend more time thinking about what you want than actually going after it. It's a big one. You predict failure before you get to the finish line. Also, I think I have 10 things here. So go back, rewatch, see how many of those first 5 that you have. And I want you to count how many of the 10 that you have, okay? So 5 was this 5 or 6? This is 6. You predict failure before you get to the finish line. This is a huge one. One of the biggest reasons that people don't have what they want in life is quite simply they pulled back before they ever got to the finish line. There are so many people who do that, whether it's business goals, it's relationship goals, it's body goals. You've already determined you're not going to get there before you fully saw it through. You hold yourself to impossibly high standards and feel like you can never meet them. If you're like a high standards girly, but you don't live up to your standards, shame. You turn on yourself the moment things don't go as planned or when facing potential failure. The next one, instead of seeing challenges as opportunity, you feel more hopeless at the face of them rather than ready and excited. And then the last thing, you attach meaning to everything. You think your body isn't good enough. Being single at 32 must mean you're undesirable. The fact that you weren't part of a more popular friend group in high school it's affected your 20s. Your bank account, your job title, what you do or don't do on the weekends, how big your social media following is. You allow a lot of that to mean something about you. So those are the shame-fueled behaviors we've got. And just assess how many of that list did you actually have. And definitely go to share that in the community. The first thing that I want to say is that if you have shame going on, and you're thinking like that and you have a lot of those behaviors, like it or not, you have a fixed mindset. We all want to think we're like so evolved with our growth mindsets, but if you continually think that you're not good enough, predict failure, this is just who you are and it's why you can't hit goals, that's a fixed mentality. Shame has locked you into fixed thinking. Not enough becomes a conclusion rather than a challenge and something that you can build upon and change. If you're someone who it doesn't matter how much you journal or do the inner work or self-analyze, you seem to stay stuck in the same patterns, it's because you're basically trying to out-journal the fact that you have a fixed mindset and have already decided that you can't do it. So this is where I'm going to kind of turn shame on its head, though. So beyond the fixed mindset, beyond the behaviors, I get very amped about this topic because I think a lot of people talk about shame in terms like of a very fluffy or almost like Instagram therapy ways that sound really nice, but actually tend to reinforce the cycle because they don't show you how to use shame. You've heard so many variations on what to do of like self-love is the antidote to shame when I actually don't think it always is. You might have heard that shame is your inner critic and you have to get rid of it and ignore what your inner critic says. No, that won't work and I wouldn't recommend that actually. And then the last thing is like you get a lot of just like affirmations and reframe into positive thoughts. That's just a band-aid solution. I don't actually think the goal is to eradicate shame. I do think we need to get rid of this every part of your life being plagued by not enough. And I do think that we need to get out of the fixed mentality. But I don't think the goal should be we get rid of this and all of that. I think you should start getting really curious about it and start understanding your shame so that you can actually use it as a tool when it comes up rather than something that shuts you down completely and has you self-destruct. So now in my life, I have learned how to use shame enough so that I no longer have that fixed mentality, that not enough plague all over every part of my life, bleeding into everything. And so, but not only that, but if shame does come up now, it gives me an opportunity to grow. It gives me a perfect, on a silver platter opportunity to actually get closer to everything I want. But most people aren't using shame like that because they don't know how. When shame has you go critical, you should be going curious instead. But I'm going to go a very different route than you're used to today with shame. And the reason that I'm doing this is because I really want you to flip everything on its head in this mini course. I really want you to get something out of it. And how we talk about shame in Fiera in my year-long program is a lot of this. It's digging so deep. It's getting to the root of it. So I was like, you know what? I have to give them a flavor of this here so that you're actually starting to see how it shows up. So while most want you to unconsciously search for why you experience shame and spend entire journals on it and spend years in therapy over it, but still don't feel like you're at the root of it, I want us to try and get at the root of it by showing you how you unconsciously keep shame in many ways because you benefit from it. How you secretly use shame as a tool in your arsenal to stay stuck. Because staying stuck has its benefits. It does. And I want to say too, all those other ways that I just said, like the journaling, the therapy, those are great and often really necessary. But I've also coached women people across 6 continents at this point. And a lot of the time, what I've seen is that the reason why we can't ever seem to overcome it despite years of working on it, is for these reasons, is because it's painful, but we're also benefiting from it. I'm going to touch on them as brief as I can. I spent hours on it in Fiera. I've tried to make this video short, but this is going to be probably the longest one of the entire 10-day mini course, but we're going to condense it down. Before we get into kind of the ways that you're using shame to your benefit, we have to know that shame is just thwarted fear. It's almost always developed from an experience or a belief that has us thinking that we'll be safer if we shrink or stay in the familiar, which is why it works so well with quitting. And it's not this evil voice being like, you're so inadequate, even if it feels that way, if it feels very almost like oppressive. It's a mechanism that we use that is actually trying to protect us in its own twisted ways. Think about like a scared dog, like a really scared dog. It's going to bite and bark to try and protect itself, and shame really isn't that different. And in the context of quitting, it's this thwarted fear that thinks that if we shrink ourselves, if we constantly tell ourselves that we're not good enough, we will somehow protect ourselves from the failure, rejection, disappointment, convincing us that we should quit early before that ever happens. So here are the 7 ways that you might actually be keeping shame because it's subconsciously benefiting you. Number 1, not enough is your favorite socially acceptable excuse to get out of hard things. It is a permission slip that our society often accepts for quitting or not going after what we want. If you don't feel experienced enough for a job, then you don't have to apply. If you think you're not good enough to be a content creator, it's an excuse for you to get out of the discomfort of posting and being cringy. Don't think you'll hit the goal. You allow yourself to lower it to when you think you will hit. It benefits us because we get to avoid exposure, we get to avoid challenge and our fears. And nobody argues with it once you say it. Notice that. It almost becomes like this bulletproof excuse. Number 2 is that not enough makes you feel small. We all know this. But in a lot of weird ways, it can also make you feel special. If everyone else can do something, like I see other people succeeding, but it just feels like I can't, then you get to feel like the exception. When your struggles feel more complicated or your flaws are too deep or unique, it almost relieves you of responsibility to have to figure it out. And that sense of feeling different can actually almost like stroke your ego in disguise and makes you feel more important and special. As we go through these, cop yourself, like literally clock yourself for which ones you've got going on. And this is going to be a hard video, right? It might be hard for some people to really admit this, and you might feel all sorts of things, but just sit with it. Number 3 is that shame isn't just about you feeling less than, it's about other people seeing that you're not good enough. So yes, it's that you feel inadequate, but it's also that you don't want to have to put yourself out there and have other people see that you think you're not good enough, which actually often is because you feel the need to be seen as superior. When this is going on, it's almost that you use not enough as this reason, not about not trying, but not if you don't feel good enough and then you don't try, you then therefore don't have to risk people seeing you as average, in progress, or subpar, or figuring it out. For some, it is literally preferable to fail by omission than have someone see them in progress because they have such a need to be seen as superior. And you're not thinking that way. Let me say that. It's not like you're thinking, oh, I need people to see me as superior. It is that the thought of people seeing you as not good enough is such a threat to your ego that you don't go after it because why? Yes, you want to only put yourself out there when you know you'd win, when you know you'd be the best, which is the superiority. And if you quit early or you never attempt it because of this, then you get to feel in control of the narrative. If I hear a client say this, I call them out so hard. When they say something along the lines of like, I know if I gave it my all, I'd succeed. Or like I could have, but I didn't try. No, you didn't give it your all. You don't have the capacity to give it your all. You either don't have the identity, the nervous system, the habits to give it your all because your ego is feeling threatened because you need to feel superior. That's actually what's going on there. And we're going to talk about this one more in day 2. The 4th reason out of the 7 is that you have learned that not enough gets rewarded. I have absolutely done this one. You have maybe learned that when you tell people you don't feel good enough, you get coddling, you get sympathy, you get attention, and you get love. You've learned that people will compliment you and they'll gas you up and they'll tell you how great you are and how much potential you have and how much they believe in you. And then shame has almost become like this bonding currency for you. You connect, you get care from others without having to change, and it almost reinforces your identity as someone who struggles as well, so it keeps you in that cycle. And that reinforcement makes you feel validated. So that validation actually has almost become more important to you than hitting your goals. So what was self-doubt and what was kind of, this I don't feel good enough has also now morphed itself almost into this like emotional indulgence. The 5th one is that you think you're afraid of failure, but you're actually very afraid to be powerful. I've also had this one go on a lot. I've had all of them go on, but this one for sure. If you drop the story of you're not enough and really own that you are capable, you do know you're capable, you know that you could do it, then you'd feel responsible for actually stepping up your game. And being in your power like that is unfamiliar now because you've played out this shame story so much that it scares you. It is easier to sit in more, not even easier, it is, well, easier, but it's easier and more familiar to sit in the familiar discomfort of feeling inadequate than the unfamiliar discomfort of growth. I think the truth is you are just afraid of how much different it would feel and how like crawl out of your skin it might feel to be confident and powerful and fully step up and own that you can do this. The 6th thing is that not enough fuels our avoidance patterns. Not enough in this idea of like, I don't feel good enough sounds really deep, but sometimes it can actually just be surface level protection. So long, and this is actually I want you to sit and maybe replay this one back because it is a huge one that I see with clients. But so long as you cling to the story of, I don't feel good enough, you never have to really ask yourself the question of, what do I get to avoid so long as I keep telling myself this? This is really the biggest benefit of keeping your shame. So often, as long as we cling to this story, we never have to explore the deeper, scarier things often going on. The thoughts that we're too terrified to even admit to ourselves. Like inside Fieta, we have these things called daily drops, and it's 365 days of activities and actions and trainings that really up your confidence, your discipline, your self-trust, your self-respect, makes you physically, mentally, emotionally richer with time freedom, all these things. It's really great. But one of them that we just did this last month was write down, and I won't go too deep into it, but it was like write down the 10 sentences that you won't even admit in your own brain. You won't say it to yourself. You won't write them down. You won't admit them. But if you were completely raw and vulnerable here, you'd write them down right now. And that was such a liberating experience because it was like years of thoughts and beliefs that girls had like buried way deep down. And they just kept covering it up with, I don't feel good enough, I don't feel good enough. But it's like when you get to the core like that, you can go so much further. So examples of using not enough to fuel your avoidance patterns is you procrastinate, but you call it perfectionism. You binge scroll, but you call it needing inspiration. You avoid the things that make you uncomfortable, but then you call it balance. It is often the chronic usage of not enough that has taught you how to run on avoidance more than anything, avoidance more than action, letting your emotions constantly decide what you do and don't do. And the seventh thing is that not enough has become part of your identity, which is why you keep it. If it's a part of our identity, we will keep playing it out. Think about if you identify as like, oh, I'm like always late, and you hate that about yourself, but you always tell yourself that, you will continue to manifest it and play it out. It's the same with not enough. Letting go of it would in part mean letting go of your norm, of your default, of what's familiar to you. And that's terrifying for a lot of people because the second you part for it, you have to decide who you're going to be now instead. And the ego hates a blank slate, okay? So you cling to shame, not because it feels good, and not because it is true, but because it feels true to you. So it's easier for you to actually cling to it and keep shame and benefit from it because you don't have to go out there and really challenge yourself or make yourself uncomfortable. You just get to keep doing what you're doing. Shame makes so many quitters because so often I see people who are just pushing it away, running from it, avoiding from it, while secretly benefiting from it the whole time. Shame can be something that once you overcome the not enough that we really do work on in my world, but it can become something that makes you sharper, stronger, more capable if you know how to use it. It's pointed out the places that I need to grow. It's exposed my weak spots, my blind spots, and honestly, some of my biggest accomplishments have come from my ability to turn around, face my shame, and use it to my advantage. Like truly, I think the biggest example is simply starting my business. That came from my ability to stop running from shame and actually learn how to catalyze it into fuel and go run fast with it towards what I did want. Because I learned how to sit with my shame, interpret it, regulate through it, and translate it into action. What makes the biggest difference here is whether you're shaming yourself or whether you're getting curious about the shame itself. Shaming yourself is the not enough, putting yourself down, self-judging, critiquing, comparing, all of that. Whereas getting curious is when shame gets really powerful because curiosity pulls you out of the collapse and into way deeper levels of awareness. When you stop running from shame, you actually get to see the weaknesses that it's pointing out, the patterns you keep circling, the shadows that you've been avoiding. So here's your task today. Get curious about the shame. Answer the questions below and come share about it in Circle. Come share about it in the community. Then come back and listen to this training for a second time. Totally fine if you do it while on a walk, while making dinner, while doing laundry, doesn't matter. I just want these ideas to like sink in a little deeper for you. Notice if shame comes up at any point in the day. It probably even did during this video, and get curious about it instead and go deeper. I know I've only given you like such a little taste of it, but if you run with this little itty bitty like taste that I've given you on shame, you will change a lot for yourself. And this is why people in my program get results. Awareness with action, mental reps, and then with movement as well. If you stuck with this for even a month, your life would look completely different, but most people can't because they don't have the nervous system identity and habits to really be able to sit with it and catalyze it, okay? So go ahead, answer the questions in circle first, go re-listen to this later, and I will catch you in the next video. Okay, guys, if you loved that, if you felt really called out by it, if you felt triggered by it, if you felt, but also I could see how good this would be for me in this kind of perspective, then I highly encourage you to come join the full mini course, the full anti-quitter protocol. It's 10 days of 5 days are really digging in like this into ego, into dysregulation, into shame, into the things that keep us quitting and sabotaging ourselves. But then the last 5 days actually mirror part of my program, Fiera, which is my year-long program training your nervous system, your habits, your identity to build the confidence and discipline that you know will get the results you want. But what that mirrors in it is that we do these activities every single day inside Fiera, 365 days a year. There's a new training, a new activity where we really help you build your financial, emotional, mental, physical, time wealth. And we do that by helping you build up your confidence, build up your discipline, all of that. It's great. And so the last 5 days really mirror that. So if you loved it, if you want to see more, just go to the link below and sign up for the anti-quitter protocol, and then you will receive that in your email and you can get started.